You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
JT Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Ford,
Corey, Dr. O,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mott,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Charlene Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is...
Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm super excited to have Claire Douglas back on the show with us. She was on about a year ago and had a fantastic conversation about her book, Then She Vanishes. But today, we're here to talk about her brand new book, The Couple at Number 9. It's been out for about a month now, and let me tell you what, this book is causing sleepless nights for a lot of readers. I know this is such a good book, and in Claire Douglas fashion, it is twisty and turny and guaranteed to leave you looking over your shoulder, like great thrillers do. Welcome back to the show, Claire.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you back. Claire, there's a question that I've been asking people lately, and it's kind of a fun way to kick off conversation. And is there a piece of writing advice that you received, somewhere along your writing journey, and maybe it was a great piece of advice that you look back on and are thankful that you had this advice to refer back on, or maybe it's writing advice that's so terrible that you just can't help looking back on and think, oh, I'm so glad I didn't take that, or I wish I would not have taken that.
I think actually I had quite a good advice from someone. I can't remember who it was. It might have been an author. I read like an article that they had, like an interview they had. And it was about to write your book and not keep reading over what you've already written, but just to write the whole thing and not look back at it and then worry about it at the end. And I think that works well for me, not to keep going back over the same chapters, just to keep moving forward with it.
And that is the temptation, isn't it? That you want that first chapter especially to just be perfect. And the temptation is that you never finish the book because you keep going over that first chapter. I know that's such a temptation.
Yes. Yeah. So that really helped me. I still think about that now. I still think, right, get on with it. Stop going over the same chapters over and over again.
The Couple at Number 9. How many books is this for you now?
That's number 7. Number 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
The last time we talked, we talked about the early days of your writing career and how you like a lot of people, just felt like that this was such an unattainable dream, almost at times. Looking back now with 7 books under your belt, how do you view where you are now versus when you were first breaking in? Does the storytelling get any easier knowing that you've had success?
I think actually I find it harder now almost, because I think you're always trying to sort of you keep thinking, I think, oh, this might have just been a one-off, right. I managed to do it once, what if I can't do it again? And I think that every single time I'm like, I just don't think I can do it. I can't write. I can't remember how to write. So for me, I think, and the pressure as well, like if you've had a book that's done well, you want your next book to do well. And so you put a lot of pressure on yourself. Whereas when I think I wrote my first one, I didn't have there was no expectation. It was just, it was almost like writing it for myself. Whereas now I'm writing it with readers in mind, with my editor in mind. So in some ways, I think it's harder.
Yeah. It's really interesting talking to people that have just broken into the industry over the last year or two, because they never knew what it was like to launch a book not during a pandemic. And you had several before the pandemic, and then you launched a book during the pandemic, and then also trying to write a book during that time. First off, did you and your family fare okay through that, and how did that experience affect your creative life?
Yeah, it was difficult because The Couple at Number 9 was my lockdown book, because that was the book I was writing when everything went to lockdown in the UK. My daughter and my son, they both were homeschooled. I had to homeschool them as well. So It was really difficult to find the time to sort of, get away from everything and concentrate. So I wrote that book quite quickly. And I think in some ways that actually helped it, because I wrote it quite quickly. I wrote it when they went back to school, like most of it when they went back to school, because I kept thinking I need to get as much down as I can because they might be off again. And they were off again because we had a few lockdowns here in the UK. So that sort of gave me like the momentum to write it as quickly as I could, because I knew that it might not be for very long before they were back home again being homeschooled. So that sort of gave me the kick that I needed to finish it and to do it quickly. So actually it was probably, out of all my books I've written, I wrote that the quickest. So
wow. Can you look back at that story now and tell that it was a lockdown pandemic book? Does it have are there things about this story that just kind of scream, we're all locked down? Is it that sort of book, or is it just a different connection that you have with the book?
I think you're right. I think it is, because it's set in a small little village, and it's set like in a cottage, really. So it's quite a claustrophobic book. And I think that probably, has a knock-on effect from the fact that I felt claustrophobic at home, stuck in the house, not being able to really go anywhere. And they are sort of in that same situation, because in it, the couple, they find bodies, and there's lots of journalists outside, and they feel like they can't really go out of the house. So I think that definitely had a knock-on effect. I think that was like an inspiration for the book, the fact that we were going through a similar thing here, being locked in.
Yeah. One thing that I love hearing about, Claire, is the beginnings of a project. At one point, The Couple at Number 9 did not exist in any form or fashion, and then an idea pops into your head, and you start kind of casting this plot device, maybe with people, or maybe a character just walks onto the stage of your mind, and you're what is she up to, and and then in some fashion, The Couple at Number 9 does exist, and then it's your job as the writer to dig that story out, excavate it, polish it up, and all of that. What was that first moment of inspiration like for this book?
Yeah, so so years ago, I was a journalist, and one of the stories I had to cover was this couple who found a skeleton in their basement. They were doing a kitchen extension, and they found it. But it was a really old skeleton dating back to like Roman times. But that story's always sort of been in my head, thinking what would happen if that hadn't been, like a Roman time skeleton, but actually a crime had been committed. So that was the sort of the start of the inspiration for that story. And then the twist, which I can't give away, but there's a twist in it that I've been thinking about for a while, and that I thought this would work really well with this story. So those were the two things that I thought about first of all, and then I quite liked the thought of doing a sort of generation thing of a grandmother, the daughter, and the granddaughter, and the secrets that sort of that span the generations. So that was the inspiration for that. Really, that's how it started.
So as these kind of ideas start coming to you, do you start collecting the ideas, like, oh, this could be a part, this could play into it? Like what is your fact gathering like in the early stages of writing?
So I have I think I have the main idea and the twist, and then I think that then the characters sort of come to me, and then as I started writing, most of it comes as I'm writing it. So when I was writing the story of Rose, who is the grandmother, who she goes into a nursing home because she's got dementia, and it's her cottage that she hands down to her granddaughter. And so the bodies that are found in the cottage in the garden, they date back to when Rose lived there. So then I have a backstory of Rose and her lodger Daphne, and that story that was like a natural, organic story that actually the sort of relationship between those two women that came as I started writing it. So they started with, I thought they were going to be friends. And then as I was writing it, I thought, no, they need to be a couple. They need to be in love. So that was like that was something that I hadn't really planned. So sometimes things happen that you're not expected to happen. they sort of take up, they sort of take up their own life.
Yeah. How much of the story do you know before you start writing that first draft? Like, are you a big planner ahead of time and, kind of sketch out a roadmap? Or are you the kind of writer that writes a little bit, kind of gets to know the characters and then understands where the story's going?
Yeah, I think I'm a bit of both. So I definitely like to have the sort of main plot, the twist, and the ending. I'd like to know who is the baddie, if you want, who is the victims, who's the culprit, and then everything else. I think it sort of comes to me as I'm writing it, as I get to know the characters. I think by the halfway point, I'm normally like, right, I know what's going on. I really understand this now. But I do have a rough outline before I start, because I think otherwise if I didn't know anything about it, I think I'd get myself in knots trying to figure it all out. So I have to have it sort of figured out before I start writing.
The main character that we meet, Saffron, or Saffy, as she goes by, she, as you alluded to, she inherits this place from her grandmother and is excited. She has a boyfriend, Tom, who she's with, and she's pregnant. These are it's almost like you stack, like what could I use to ratchet up the tension? Let's give her a boyfriend. Let's make her pregnant. Do you think about things like that when you're kind of first working on these characters, and what can I use against them?
Yeah. I think it was really important because the thread that goes through the story is the relationship between the grandmother, the mother, and the granddaughter. So Saffron, she hasn't got a great relationship with her mother, Lorna, because Lorna had her when she was quite young. So Saffy always felt she was closer to her grandmother, Rose. So it wasn't until she has her own baby, or that she's pregnant herself, that she could really understand what it was like for her mum. So I wanted her to sort of experience being pregnant, so that she could sort of, by the end of the book, because she has the baby at the end of the book, understand what it was like to be a mother, and understand, sort of appreciate her own mother in a better way, and to realise that the things that Lorna did is not, it was still out of love, but it's hard, it's hard being a parent. So that was why I wanted her to be pregnant. So I always knew she was going to be pregnant.
Wow, that's man. So when you're kind of looking at the twist, is that something that you're excited about in writing? I can't wait to get up to this place where I can completely throw the reader off. Like how do you think about the twist and the misdirection of readers?
Yes, I think I do love writing the twist. That's my favorite bit. And what's quite fun about it is because obviously I know the twist, so I know as I'm writing it how I'm trying to throw the reader off, because I know what the twist is going to be. But sometimes little things happen, so I knew what the twist was going to be, but then there's a few little things that as I put in there, I thought, oh, this is quite a good idea to put in there, because this will work really well when the twist is revealed. Little clues, I suppose, that don't really mean anything at first to whoever's reading it until afterwards, when the twist is apparent, and then they can go back and think, this is what she meant when she said this, or this happened. So the twist for me is it's the exciting bit. It's the bit where it all comes together, and the twist comes about in this one. The twist comes about I think 2/3 in, and then it was really good fun because I had to write then from a different. Someone else comes into it, a different voice, and that was fun to write as well. So I did really enjoy writing that bit.
You have alternating viewpoints throughout the story. Is that? Do you plan those? Like, I'm going to write this chapter from this character's perspective, and then I'm going to switch up next, or do you kind of work out each character's viewpoint ahead of time and then stitch them together? How does that part of the writing come about?
Yeah, I always have to write in a sort of chronological order, so I can't write scenes out of sequence. I have to sort of start from the beginning and then work and keep writing until I get to the end. So as I'm writing it, I might think, I think we now need to hear from someone else to tell this part of the story. So it sort of becomes, as I'm writing it, I can normally think this needs to be now someone else. So I knew, for example, this a character called Theo. I knew that he needed to be in it because he needed to tell his story. But what I did find a little bit difficult was to work out when is the best point to introduce someone else, because you've got the two women to start with. And then I was like, well, we're going to now introduce this other person. And I don't want to sort of make it a bit like, oh, what's going on here? So that is trying to find the right time. But I think most of the time I can work out as I'm writing it. I can think, like, this is the right time now. This person needs to tell that part of the story. So I can't, I wish I could sometimes. I wish I could sort of stitch it together at the end, but I can't do it like that.
When you're thinking about different character viewpoints, do you think of it in terms of adding a different viewpoint here will allow me to tell a different part of the story that maybe this other character doesn't know about, and I can bring the reader along without jeopardizing what this character knows? Or is it a way to, I can throw the reader off a little bit by adding this viewpoint? Kind of, I guess what I'm asking is, what do different viewpoints bring to the story?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the first one, where I like to, it's elements of the story that the reader needs to know, but the other characters don't necessarily know. So it's like, for us the reader to have like an idea of what's going on. It's important that they see the other side of what's happening. And then obviously, eventually, the main characters will also get what's going on. But at first, it's to bring in another voice, I think, another side of the story that, the characters don't know, the main characters, but we need to know. It's like with Theo, we needed to know Theo and his dad, because his dad's quite important to the story later on. Right. And Theo is important as well. But and there's things that happen there that all tie up at the end. But yeah, so that's why, like, I mean, sometimes it's quite nice because you think, oh, I just want to change it up a bit and make it a bit more exciting for the reader if there's another voice. But most of the time, I think it helps to have elements of the story. So it makes it more layered, I think, and three-dimensional.
One fun thing about a book like this is when you get to the end of it, you want to reread the story again. And one way of thinking would be, well, it's all kind of built around this twist. And once you know the twist, then you know the story. But one of the fun things about it is rereading the story to pick up on all the clues that you didn't know you were overlooking to begin with. You put things in front of us, but we don't know that they matter until we know.
Yes.
But then once we know, we're like, oh, I want to go back and find all of the ways that Claire misdirected me or put things in my path that I was ignorant of at the time. How fun is that? When you get to the end of a project to know, okay, I've left all these breadcrumbs. Let's see if they get them.
Yeah, that is fun. That is really fun. I do. That is like the one of my favorite bits of it, I think. Especially as I'm writing it as well. Like as I'm writing it, I'm like, oh, I know what I'm doing. Like I know the twist, so I'm going to put this in here because this will be important. So there's one scene. I won't say too much, but there's one scene where they're in a cafe, and one of the characters makes a sort of like observation, let's say, of one of the characters, and that's important. But obviously, as you're reading it, you're not realizing that's important, but it is important later when you go back and see why, without giving anything away.
You worked as a journalist before you became a novelist. Did the work that you did then did that add tools to your toolkit that you use now as a novelist?
I think so. I think for me, the deadlines. I think when I was a journalist, I had to write to deadline and write a lot every day. And I think that sort of gives me the motivation and to stick to like a set amount of words a day, and to try and stick to deadlines. So that has really helped me, I think. And also, I did a lot of human interest stuff, so that's really handy. Like getting to know, like find out what makes people tick. And I think that's really useful in fiction when you're writing about characters. So I think that's really helped me as well.
Claire, you are a very jovial, happy, bubbly personality. Yet you write some horribly dark things sometimes. How do you how do you juggle, kind of stepping into the darkness to write some of the things you do, and then be able to step away from it and soak in love and all of the good things in life.
It is hard sometimes. I think when I've got my little office, so I come into my office, and when I'm in here, and I put my little headphones on. I listen to like movie soundtracks or like series soundtracks. So no words, but just music, dark music, and that really helps get me into that sort of like dark mindset. So I feel like as soon as I step up my office and take off my AirPod things, I can sort of be me again. Do you know what I mean? It's like I come in and I come into my office and I sort of change into this dark person. So sometimes when I go on the school run and I've been in this dark mindset all day, I've got to then, act all sunny. And it feels quite strange sometimes because sometimes you're in your head still. You're in that sort of, the characters and that dark storyline. So I have to snap out of it. So that can be quite hard sometimes.
We talk a lot about how no matter how much success you've had in the past, the great equalizer is the blank page. Like every author starts a new project with nothing, just a blank page and the keyboard, and here we go. And everyone starts at the same place. The other kind of aspect of that is that when you have written an emotionally draining book and you've taken readers on this journey, when you finish that book, a lot of times you're like, I can never write a book like that again. It's just, I just don't have it in me. But invariably, enough time goes by and another idea comes in and you get excited about a new idea all over again. Do you have kind of that emotional dip at the end of a book? And how does that resurrect to get you excited again for a new project?
Yeah, that is quite hard. I think normally I end up handing a book in around the end of the year. So end of November, beginning of December. And then I can't, and then I have to throw myself into something practical, like painting like a room, or doing something quite mundane, tidying the house, having a real sort of, and just clearing my head of any type of story. And then I normally get it back around January to sort of edit it. And I can't start thinking about a new one, I don't think, until about maybe March. And then slowly ideas start to come into my head. But normally when I'm doing something quite mundane, so like if I'm painting like a room, suddenly I start to think again about, maybe this might happen. But yeah, it takes me a good 3 or 4 months, I think. I almost need a break from thinking about stories and characters.
I just remembered something I wanted to ask you about in this book. When the bodies that are found in the house, Rose was Saffy's grandmother. Was the former owner of the house, but now she has developed Alzheimer's. And so, as a witness, as a source of information, she is not reliable because of the illness that she has. But then you start wondering if she is kind of playing that to her advantage or not.
Yeah.
What was the idea for you to have her deal with this illness, and when did you realize, this is something that maybe she could use to her advantage?
I think when I first started writing, I thought it'd be really interesting to write about some like old lady in an old like nursing home who has Alzheimer's and says she doesn't remember anything. And then as I started writing it, I thought, how interesting if she actually did maybe remember more than she's saying she remembers, because what a great way of hiding the truth. If you might know more than you're letting on, but you've got a good excuse as to why you can't remember. So it wasn't until I started writing the character of Rose, the older version of her, that I suddenly thought actually that would be a good way of dealing with her keeping things to herself without having to say. So there's a couple of scenes where she's been interviewed by the police, and then she suddenly just sort of decides that she can't remember anything else, and she start saying things that they think, oh, we should really take her back to a room. But it's like, can she really remember them? So, I mean, she has got Alzheimer's. She does have Alzheimer's, but, with Alzheimer's, there are times when you can remember. So, and obviously the times when she can remember, she does really remember. But yeah.
The couple at number 9 has been out for about a month here in the States, and it is really resonating with readers. I think right now on Amazon, there's close to 35,000 reviews, after a month. How does it make you feel when, there's that nervousness around release day? Are people going to like the book? Is it, going to matter to people, and it's all the questions that, go through your mind. And then the book comes out and then you start realizing, oh, people are actually loving this book and it's really connecting with people. What is that feeling like when you kind of get past the nerves of not knowing what's going to happen and then dealing with the fact that people are loving it?
It is a lovely feeling. It is really lovely because, you like you said, you get so nervous beforehand. You think, oh gosh, everyone's going to hate it. People aren't going to get it or like it or just, like I said, relate to it in any way. But the fact that so many people have, and I get so many lovely messages, it really does make it all like worthwhile. All that sort of, doubt and fear really worthwhile. But then obviously you start worrying then about the next one and think, oh gosh, am I going to be able to do this again? Am I going to be able to write another one that people like? So it all starts all over again. But yeah, it's really lovely. It really does. It makes it all worthwhile, I think, especially when you hear from readers who say that they've loved it and or they've recommended it to people. It's just lovely. It really is.
What are you working on now, Claire? Is there an equally frightening story at work in your mind right now?
Well, The Girls Who Disappeared has just come out in the UK, and that's coming out in the US in January. And then now I'm writing the 9th book, which is still quite early in the early stages, but that doesn't come out until a year's time. So I've got a bit of time to write that still. But yes, so yeah, I'm working on that at the moment. But again, the fear and the worry that people won't like it, or that they're not going to think it's good. So yes, it's like a sort of turning circle of worry and excitement. It's a very big roller coaster.
Well, I think it's safe to say that readers are going to flock to whatever you put out next. So I can't wait to see what comes next. The Couple at number 9, available everywhere now. We're going to have links to it in the show notes where you can grab it in Kindle edition or hardcover or audiobook. I've had a chance to listen to the audiobook and it is phenomenal. That's if you're an audiobook person, definitely grab the audiobook. Claire, if people are just discovering you and want to dig into everything that you're doing, is there a place where they can connect with you online?
Yes, so I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. So I think my on Instagram I'm Dougie Claire, I think, or Claire Douglas Author, I think, on Instagram, and then Dougie Claire on Twitter.
Great. We'll link those up and make it easy for folks to find you. The Couple at number 9, go grab it today. Claire, thank you so much for taking time to come back on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.